Hi, this is Mark Laughlin with the Ambidextral Gunfighter, doing a follow-up review after the PPQ, which I heralded as the Ambidextral Gunfighter pistol. I have now taken possession of an H&K VP9. They had it at Sportsman's Warehouse for $529, so I just couldn't pass that up to do a review. And it looks like my daughter-in-law may take the PPQ for her personal self-defense, so we'll see how this goes. Now, as you'll see in some of the drills I'm going to be doing, I do a lot left-handed, of course. I tend to favor presentation of the weapon left-handed. Even though I'm ambidextrous, I favor the left-handed presentation for several reasons. One is if you're riding a motorcycle, it leaves your right hand free to operate the throttle and the front brake. You can actually operate a motorcycle one-handed with your right hand, but you cannot operate a motorcycle driving it with your left hand. So if you want to be able to shoot while riding a motorcycle, you got to shoot left-handed. Other thing is if you're law enforcement, I think left-handed is better, because if you're approaching a hostile vehicle, you've pulled over a vehicle and it's a high-risk situation, that gets you, as you're approaching the driver's side of the vehicle that you pulled over, so that when you approach the driver's side of the vehicle, you have a better angle left-handed to potential threats, and you can actually make use of cover from behind the car as well. And then also, as a law enforcement or a civilian, if you need to shoot from a vehicle while driving, you can of course shoot through your windshield, but if you want to prevent yourself from becoming like damn near permanently deaf, you can shoot left-handed out the window, out your driver's side window, left-handed. And then also, if you're leaving the vehicle and you're stepping out of it, that gives you the ability to open the door and then poke the pistol out from behind some semblance of cover from your vehicle and engage threats. Now, as far as the H&K, now I noted in the PPQ review that I initially did not care for it because it did not have a perfectly mirrored slide release. And I cannot understand why they did not extend this a little bit further so that they were identical on both sides, but they did not. So, but I decided to give it a try anyway, and I can operate it left and right. The slide release, it is not as smooth and as good as the PPQ. However, the trigger on the H&K VP9 is better than the PPQ. A lot of reviewers have been just raving about the PPQ trigger. I have found it not to be spectacular. It's okay, it's not bad, and as I've mentioned in previous videos, for convulsive grip shooting, it's not that critically important, but when you get those long-range shots and you need a precise trigger control, the H&K has a much better trigger, and it has to do with the firing pin safety. Now, the firing pin safety in the PPQ, as the trigger bar pulls across that and depresses that, there's a lot of creep generated from that. And the H&K uses more of a rotary, I guess you'd call a rotary firing pin release or firing pin block, so that it's just a lot smoother, way smoother. Now, what I found is that while the trigger on the VP9 is excellent, after you take up the slack, it has a very clean break. It's the reset is pretty, it shoves you out there quite a bit, and it becomes hard to do that follow-up. So if you're the type that wants to work the reset, to ride the reset, then the VP9 is probably not for you. The PPQ and its trigger is getting better and better the more I shoot it, but if you work the reset, the follow-up shots are very almost single action-ish, I guess you might say. A nice quick easy reset and a pretty crisp break right after if you ride the reset. If you go all the way out on the PPQ and you take up the slack, you get this little bit of creep, and that seems to be going away more and more the more I shoot the pistol. So we may see further improvement on that. One thing I do like on the H&K is it does have illuminated sights, and they're steel sights. Has the Novak ramp style rear sight, which I actually like for not hanging up on stuff. It, of course, does prevent you from doing the belt, operating the slide from your belt. But that's not something I care about. I like the non-snag features of the ramp Novak style sights. Now the other thing on, one commenter noted that the luminous sights on the H&K VP9 are not on all models. It's just some particular models, so you'll want to look into that to see exactly what kind of sights you're getting. As far as luminous sights, these ones that pick up exposure to light and then they glow for a while, I'm not sure I'm really keen on them. I think I'd prefer to have tritium, and my reasoning is that if your pistol's in a holster, that front sight's going to be covered up, and what you could potentially end up with is illuminated rear sights and a dark front sight, which is, if you're using the sights, is probably not exactly ideal, because your whole thing is to focus on your front sight. And so I think tritium sights would be better than these glow-in-the-dark ones that require some sunlight to get them lit up. And I did notice last night that these they don't stay glowing really that long after exposure to light, so I just don't know that they're going to be that useful in the real world. But they are bright, even when they're not glowing. They're nice and easy to see. The H&K VP9 has the opportunity also for thinner grip presentation. It has the side panels that are thinner. It does not have the lumps that I so dislike on the PPQ. It does have the finger grips on the front of the grip, but they're not nearly as problematic as the ones on the PPQ. I do not have the issue where my hand shifts down. Now, your mileage may vary. I do like the smaller back strap, smaller grip panels, and that gets my trigger finger where it gets a 90-degree pull straight back. One cool thing I like is, it's not critical, but is the using a takedown lever instead of the little difficult to pull down takedowns on the Glocks or the PPQ. Basically on the VP9, you lock the slide all the way back. There's no holding it halfway. Shift your takedown lever down and slide comes right off. Fast and easy. Back on, lock the slide back, shift your takedown lever back up into place, and you're good to go. So very fast and easy to work with on the takedown. Like the PPQ, the H&K VP9 has the paddle style mag release, which I raved about in the PPQ review, and I also love it on the H&K VP9. I do like the little bit longer paddles on the PPQ a little better, but I'm pretty ambivalent. In fact, when I'm shooting the guns two-handed, if I close my eyes, I could scarcely tell the difference between the two in handling, shooting. The pointability of each are almost identical. In fact, I'm pretty sure the VP9 is basically a clone in many ways of the PPQ, with just some minor improvements, except for the non-improvement of the slide release. Grip texture on the PPQ is better. It's a little bit grippier, a little bit more aggressive. The harder plastic on the VP9 does not quite grip as well. I guess it's not going to be as abusive on your body if it's pressed up against your side, but if your grip's covered in blood or something, it's going to be a little more slippery. So maybe stipple it or put one of those skateboard type panels on it. Slide serrations on the VP9 are a little bit sharper, a little more aggressive, and you do have the forward slide serrations for doing the operator chamber check. They're, while a little bit better than the PPQ, I think the Ruger American Compact 9, which has a really nice slide serrations with a counter hatch on the slide serrations, so it grips in two directions. So I think the Rugers got that a little bit better than these other guys, but still the VP9 is excellent on that as well. One little thing that the VP9 has is these unique kind of little ears on the back to help you grab, so that kind of adds to the grip on the rear slide serrations. The H&K VP9 does have a cocked indicator at the back of the weapon that you can see if the pistol is actually cocked, and you do have a chamber loaded indicator on the side, although it's pretty imprecise. In fact, right now, even though the chamber is empty, it is actually kind of indicating that a round is chambered. So I mean, I wouldn't trust any of those things anyway, but it is there. It's definitely not tactile, so you couldn't actually feel it unless you have very sensitive fingers. Maybe you could feel it with the chamber loaded. I don't know. Now, as far as size and weight, the PPQ does best the H&K VP9. It is about 1.5 ounces lighter than the H&K, and a little bit, maybe a little bit smaller. Now, in my volume analysis using the Blue Guns plastic pistols, I did find that the PPQ, perhaps because of its oval slide, has a little bit less volume, and that actually bumped it up a little bit closer to the Glock 19 as far as total cc's of volume, and so therefore its rounds per cc count is very close to the Glock 19. I'll leave a discussion of my volume analysis for another video, but anyway, the H&K is a little bit heavier, a little bit larger, and it has a little bit more volume than the PPQ, but otherwise they're pretty close. Now, I had no way to do a volume analysis using the smaller grip panels. I have a feeling that this would actually be a little bit closer if we were running the smaller grip panels on this one. So some value and maybe not so much value in the volume analysis. The critical dimensions, of course, being the slide width and then the height of your grip. This does have very flush, tight-fitting slide releases, and but they're also harder to operate than the PPQ. Now, the other thing I've noticed is that the VP9, there's a lot of slack in the right side slide release. It's a little bit of slack movement up and down there. I don't notice it when shooting, but I do notice that it is harder to operate the slide on this side, a little bit harder to operate it left-handed than it is to operate it right-handed. And the PPQ does much better in that regard. It is more perfectly mirrored as far as the slide releases. But anyway, given that the trigger on the VP9 is better than the PPQ, and with the smaller grip panels, I have a grip that I prefer over the PPQ, and that I do like the ramped Novak style sights. I have kind of slightly prefer the VP9 over the PPQ. I shoot them both about the same as far as accuracy, lack thereof. The other thing concerning the trigger on the VP9 is it has this nice little trigger channel, and so the trigger actually runs in the channel, and if your finger is at the bottom of the trigger, it doesn't get pinched. If you had a glove, the glove wouldn't hang up and maybe cause the trigger not to reset. Speaking of reset, I've found that the reset on the VP9 is not as distinct as the PPQ, and also it's a lot of spring pressure when it hits that reset, kind of pushes my finger out anyway. So when I fire, do the reset, I hit the reset, and my finger just almost is pressed on out beyond the reset. So good or bad, yeah, it's not a big deal. The quality of the trigger under firing is much better. The note is, when you get your pistol, be sure and clean and appropriately lube it. I use a dry lube on mine. My son got a VP9 and he took his out shooting without cleaning it, and it had issues cycling steel case ammo. Actually, you should be using brass case ammo. If you're going to have a pistol like this, use quality ammo. This is Mark Laughlin with Ambidextral Gunfighter. That's ambgun.com. Gunfighter review of the H&K VP9.